Brought to you by Moonbeam Multimedia.
This is 16 to 1, a podcast about education, teaching, and learning.
Hello?
Hey,
Is this thing on?
it is on.
Welcome back.
Welcome back.
How we doing?
I'm doing really well. I'm rested and refreshed. I really appreciated the chance to step away for a little bit and just chill and take a minute to regroup and relax. What about you? How was your summer?
It was good. It was fast. This was a quick summer.
You had some professional development stuff going on. Do you want to
why not just
catch people up?
Sure. Completed my museum teacher fellowship at the United States Holocaust Memorial Museum in DC. So that's finished, completed. Excited to keep being part of that teacher fellow community. And I made some really good friends doing that. So that was very, very fun. And then I was chosen to go to Poland with the Auschwitz-Birkenau Memorial Foundation as one of their teacher fellows. So I got to travel with 40-some teachers from the United States.
Congratulations, by the way.
Thank you. Through Poland, and it was a dream.
Cool.
I loved it so much. I learned so much. I met really incredible people. I ate really wonderful food. The Poles are just the most kind people. It was really wonderful. So
Good.
I think about Poland like daily.
And you're back in the classroom now. School has started back up, and you have
We're back.
New teaching slate.
Everything's new.
Of new things.
All new. Yeah, we're just we're trying it. That's
what year is this?
I think I decided this is year 13.
Okay.
This is my Taylor Swift year.
Oh.
So I'm just like letting it happen, you know? So totally new classes, totally new English configuration, doing just so many different things right now. So my head is spinning, offering a new college class. So yeah, why not go back to the podcast now? This is what time?
It's a great time to take it on.
Yeah, I mean, I'm like, am I rested? No, we delayed starting this because I was yawning. So we'll get there.
Well, I definitely appreciated the summer break as well. I liked that we gave ourselves a little break from the podcast. If you've been around, this is the first time in more than 5 years since we started it that we had given ourselves a little bit of break. We're coming back to a seasonal schedule now, but we've got some really good stories coming up over the next season. If you had previously subscribed, I think it's, Apple that like unsubscribes you if new episodes haven't been published for a while. So if you wouldn't mind, just go ahead, hit that subscribe button again. Also want to remind you, sign up for the 16 to 1 podcast email newsletter. It's where you can get the latest updates, episode announcements, resources, workshop offerings, everything like that from Moonbeam Multimedia. That is us. If there's a story in your local educational community that you'd like us to cover, please contact us using our website or write to us hello@16to1.com, all spelled out. In late July of 2022, a week's worth of torrential rain battered the central Appalachian region of the U.S., bringing floods to the mountains of eastern Kentucky and West Virginia. Several governors declared states of emergency as communities grappled with rivers overflowing their banks and roadways collapsing into churning waters. For days and weeks, many towns remained completely isolated from the outside world, without supply chains or communication networks to help them confront the devastation. A stark and sudden confrontation with the fragility of human connection. In Kentucky, 40 people died during the flooding and the cleanup afterwards. Neighbors stepped in to help neighbors, volunteers converged from across the country to deliver supplies and haul away huge piles of debris. Kentucky's education and public library systems took a hit. In Letcher County, as in many communities throughout the region, the Fleming Neon and Blackie public libraries were gutted. Harry M. Cotta Library opened its doors to residents and volunteers looking for a dry place to have a cup of hot coffee. In the aftermath of the floods, library staff and patrons immediately began fundraising for repairs and a new bookmobile, theirs had been destroyed, to reach isolated residents. This rapid response, the drive to reconnect communities to knowledge and educational materials, wasn't new. It echoed a long-standing regional tradition of finding creative ways to conquer geography and ensure access to learning for people living in remote areas. One local author, Kim Michelle Richardson, started a GoFundMe for the county library system that raised more than $30,000. Richardson is the New York Times bestselling author of The Bookwoman of Troublesome Creek, a novel that surfaces a hidden regional history of the real women who rode hundreds of miles on the backs of horses and mules to deliver books to residents in remote areas of Kentucky. These were the heroic writers of the Pack Horse Library Project, a Works Progress Administration-funded initiative that transformed life in the remotest parts of Kentucky.
The early 1930s in America was a time of national recovery from the financial shockwave of Black Thursday, the stock market crash on October 24th, 1929, that signaled the beginning of a decade-long economic depression. Fortunes vanished overnight, businesses crumbled, and unemployment rates soared. According to the Franklin Delano Roosevelt Presidential Library Museum, by the time that FDR was inaugurated president on March 4th, 1933, the banking system had collapsed. Nearly 25% of the labor force was unemployed, and prices and productivity had fallen to a third of their 1929 levels. Can I say something?
Yeah, you can say something.
I would like to say something really quickly. My something is that my judgment while researching this was, how did the people say Appalachia?
Mm-hmm.
That was a really clear delineation of
whether or
who's
not
who.
you're really from around here.
Yeah. That was when we were watching those clips and stuff, I was like,
if you say it wrong, I ignore everything else you say.
No, I don't, but I do know you're not native.
Okay. In Appalachia, farms failed, lumber operations folded, and coal mines shuttered under reduced demand while families struggled to survive on dwindling resources. Unemployment in Appalachia was well above the national average, approaching 40% among working-age adults. Illiteracy rates in remote parts of Kentucky were high, and access to traditional library buildings and networks was virtually non-existent. In the midst of economic, social, and cultural isolation, residents were eager to learn and were hungry for access to books and materials that could open up new employment opportunities for them.
FDR ran his campaign on the promise of a New Deal for America, an ambitious program of economic recovery and reform efforts designed to boost employment. The creation of the New Deal and the alphabet agencies, as they were called, paved the way for the Works Progress Administration.
What are the alphabet agencies, by the way?
Oh my gosh, they created so many so fast.
So they just spun up a bunch
of... labor, it's all of those groups that, yeah.
I assume alphabet because of all the acronyms?
There's a hilarious amount of acronyms on that list.
Okay.
Yeah, but
the whole point was it's just all of these programs for stimulating Great Depression era recovery efforts.
Yeah, and they get really specific in some places. But yeah, that's just all the alphabet agencies are all the groups that they had created to try to offer support.
Got it.
So the Works Progress Administration, it's called the WPA. Their goal was to provide jobs for people until the economy stabilized itself enough to kind of reestablish what they'd had before the crash.
Mm-hmm.
One of those groups that received partial funding from the WPA was a group of pack horse librarians, and they were mostly women, but there were a few men involved.
The Pack Horse Library Project.
The story has it all.
It does.
I would just like to offer it has horses.
Oh, I'm hooked.
Mules.
I want to know everything about these people now.
Libraries. Everything. It's all together. It's such a gem.
Horses, mules, books.
So the Pack Horse Library Project predated the creation of the WPA, and it was inspired by earlier programs like the traveling libraries created by women's social clubs in the late 1800s.
As you can imagine, women's employment in the country looked very different then from how it does now.
And especially prior to the crash and after the crash.
We still have lots of social clubs around here. We're in rural Ohio where social clubs, they're still very much a feature of people's lives.
It's a big part.
Social clubs are usually there's a building, a location where people get together, but the point is to kind of just get the community gathering, usually around food or volunteerism,
music,
or something like that. Yeah.
So the travel situation in eastern Kentucky at the time consisted mostly of whatever could be traversed on foot or with pack animals. Walking paths slowly worn into horse and mule paths, and stream beds that twist and wind through sometimes treacherous mountain passes. Electricity and paved roads, a distant dream in remote areas passed over for much of the latest technological advancement appearing in more populated areas of the country. In Kentucky, Mae Florence Stafford of the Kentucky Federation of Women's Clubs gets a lot of credit for creating the program that was later revitalized under the WPA. She secured funding from a local coal baron to run a mobile library program, and did so successfully for about a year, but experienced a setback when the baron died and the funding was rescinded.
Yeah, he sounded like an interesting character. I was just looking for who was the originator of this, and there doesn't seem to be any one person. It seems It arose from a lot of organic need in this area. But yeah, May Stafford was one of the names that kept coming up as maybe one of the earliest prototypes of this program.
Yeah. The program later inspired Elizabeth Fullerton, a state director of WPA projects operating out of Louisville, who made major contributions to the Pack Horse Library Project, which was later even championed by First Lady Eleanor Roosevelt. Roosevelt visited the ladies in person to learn about the process and even said, "If the women are willing to do things because it's going to help their neighbors, I think we'll win out."
That's how you make stuff go.
That's so on brand for Eleanor Roosevelt.
It is.
She's like, of course they'll do it. The official Pack Horse Library Project is formed with the cooperation of the WPA in the mid-1930s, as well as the Kentucky Congress of Parents and Teachers, public school boards and superintendents in the region, and lots of individuals from local communities joining in to donate storage spaces, books, and money to support the program.
Yeah, they didn't get much support from the WPA. It's kind of interesting, the depth of the research in this. You can see that some sources really credit the WPA funding as being like, the thing that made it go, but
the engine
just kind of layered an extra funding source on top of this organic community-centered network that was there already.
These book ladies operated under a very interesting policy, which was BYOH or BYOM, meaning you either had to bring your own horse or mule. They were not provided.
Yeah.
So it was only the salaries.
Yes. The WPA just
adds to the complication a bit.
It does.
I think a bring your own mule policy is probably best practice. Okay. So these women, they're book women, they're book ladies, the pack saddle librarians, all kinds of names. But there were more than 200 of them, and they were employed under this WPA-funded version of the program. The women were typically between the ages of 25 and 35. They're married, and they're also typically the sole wage earner for an entire family during this time.
Mm-hmm.
Many days would start for them as early as 4 a.m. They'd hit the road to make their deliveries, or the path, not returning home until late in the evening. Can I say something historically about this time in America? Mm-hmm. This is a very fascinating time to be focusing in on because you're following just barely 10 years after the end of World War I.
Mm-hmm.
The lost generation, right? So we've got 10 years later an economic crash of one of the most seemingly stable countries in the world. We're not even 15 years away from the next World War. On top of that, many of these women that were doing this work because the men in their homes, their husbands, left. They had no jobs. They took off. They were finding work. They were maybe going to return. And so these women were like, I will just load up my mule and make nearly nothing, but these people will read. That is the most American thing I can think of. These women traveled in all sorts of weather, rain and mud, freezing conditions, and at times their horses and mules would be forced to nearly swim on their routes. Several sources mentioned that the librarians' feet would freeze in their stirrups when they delivered books in the winter as they crossed those streams and through all kinds of terrains and unpredictable Kentucky, seasons.
Yep.
When a mule or a horse died or wasn't available because many of the women would essentially rent them, they would sometimes walk up to 18 miles to complete their routes.
With heavy loads of books, by the way.
Yeah, books and books and books.
That they would sometimes shove in pillowcases, I think.
Yeah, like a bindle.
Saddlebags or pillowcases, yeah. Uh-huh.
But they didn't just deliver books. They brought around magazines. They brought children's books, recipes, quilting patterns, and other resources that might be needed in these extremely remote places.
I like the recipe books.
I know.
You'd make all kinds of practical knowledge stuff.
For some extremely remote homes, these librarians were often the only people that they would see, and they could wait weeks at a time before they saw them again. They relied on them for not only goods from the library, but also sometimes they would deliver the mail. Children's books were really popular and were some of the most requested items because of their low literacy rates in the area. Many families actually relied on their literate children to read to them. The Bible was also one of the most commonly requested items, and oftentimes when the women added a new stop on their route, they may not be met with kindness and open arms because these people were so remote. So the women would use Christianity as a way to connect, and over time it built trust.
I heard that they would recite or sing Bible passages sometimes as they were approaching.
So they knew they were safe.
They made a lot of effort. They would also give reading lessons to people.
I love it so much.
Yeah.
So in many communities, there might have only been one physical library. And so storage was needed in places more convenient for these pack librarians. So a lot of times in these communities, they would use schools, churches, a common meeting place, And even sometimes family homes were used to store their materials to help them move around. They'd create a sort of circuit so that when a book was finished in one area, it'd be moved on to the next, which meant sometimes you'd have to wait quite a while for the materials you wanted, but they were also stretching very little, very far. Librarians were constantly asking for more resources and would rebind and repair as necessary to extend the life of what books and sources they did have.
By the mid-1930s, the Packhorse Library Project had reached about 57,000 families and more than 150 public schools. The impact wasn't just in books delivered, it was in empowered communities and lifelines to learning and community connection. Decades later, Kentucky librarians are still battling the elements to deliver books and services to citizens in all parts of the state. Fleming Neon Public Library is on track to reopen later this year following an almost total rebuild, while work on Blackie Public will soon be underway after difficulties and delays relating to accessing FEMA funding for renovations. Kentucky's librarians remain committed, just as they always have been, to reaching people where and when it counts. What do you think about the library going beyond the physical library building?
If a woman on a horse could bring me my library materials, I would be thrilled. I would greet them with sugar cubes and apples.
That's way more fun than checking out audiobooks from Libby.
I want to say, though, when I get that alert on Libby, I'm pumped.
That's true.
But imagine a horse at your home.
I can't. It's
So
a little
cool.
dopamine hit from Libby saying my book is ready is not the same thing as a Packhorse librarian showing up.
Imagine that dopamine hit. I think this is exactly what librarians do. You know how the United States Postal Service is like rain or shine or, you know what I
Rain
mean?
nor sleet.
Yeah,
nor
whatever that is.
Snow.
That was basically them.
Yeah.
The fact that they were so committed to people reading.
And we're talking great physical danger.
Oh, not
to
only
deliver books.
the delivery itself,
Right.
These people might not be kind. The other thing, though, can I tell you, there were a couple things that they would not carry. And it was like scary stories or
Thrillers,
magazines or
I think.
yeah, things like that, which I love. Many people requested magazines, home improvement kind of magazines or
Practical knowledge.
yeah, like
Yeah.
homesteading, yeah, like house stuff. Those things were constantly wanted.
Everything you want to share on your Pinterest board nowadays.
It's just incredible to me. But yeah, they did have a few things they wouldn't carry, but most of what they carried was children's books. A lot of what we would consider young adult and children's books now, young adult literature.
I think we've talked a lot on the show about the service that libraries provide to communities. This really gets me thinking about the responsibilities that communities have to support libraries. I just found it really remarkable how much this program never would have happened would it not been for just people being like, we have to make it go. It's a monumental effort, and I hope we can find some kind of lesson in there for even continuing to support our libraries now. Monetary support, like either voting to support levies for libraries, but also donating of your time and your money to libraries directly. A lot of volunteer programs available. Libraries are not just stacks of books, they are active community anchors.
But they do have stacks of books.
They do have stacks of books.
Can I tell my really funny bookmobile story
Yeah,
from my childhood?
sure.
Since it's like the current day Packhorse.
Please do.
We live in the county where I grew up. We're very fortunate. We have quite a few library branches in our area, but we had a bookmobile. So the bookmobile did come to my elementary school, which was so much fun. Such a great way to, because then you got double books. Anyways, there was a bookmobile that'd come through my neighborhood, and my dad and my mom and I, we would always go down. And they would have like some movies, a pretty big children's section. And, it was like an old camper kind of thing that they've converted, bus, whatever. And one day on our walk down there, I stepped in some dog excrement. Let's say. My dad.
Wait, how old were you?
Oh gosh, maybe like 7 or 8.
Okay.
I was younger than 10 for sure.
Okay.
I tracked it all the way through the bookmobile. Nobody noticed. I didn't know it. Nothing. And my dad tells the story. It's hilarious. But he remembers hearing, "Oh, honey, I think you have something on your shoe." And then the bookmobile didn't come back for a while. My dad told me it was my fault.
They had to take it for a deep
He
clean.
said that they had to refinish the floor. And so for a while, I was pretty mortified that like my library card was declined or something. They did come back. eventually. I need it to be known that they did come back.
I'm
but
glad. I'm glad.
That's still to this day.
I feel like if you can survive your feet freezing in stirrups, then a little bit of dog doo
I know,
on the floor.
and I remember thinking, oh, those poor people have to drive. Librarians have had it much too hard for so long. Oh, they're just forever meeting the people where they are. And I will just always be so bleeping thankful for public libraries. So, this is the part of the episode where we tell you what we've learned. Luckily for us, we've had a long time to learn since we've been on such a break.
We have been on such a break, but I nonetheless...
I had a hard time deciding what to say, though.
Yeah, I took the lazy way out and went with something that I learned in preparation for this episode.
Okay.
Because it delighted me to discover it. Okay, so from 1931 to 1935 in Kentucky, the governor there was named Ruby LaFoon.
That's a made-up
He was...
person.
He...
That's a spin the wheel for a letter, man.
Tried to deal with Kentucky's economic depression, and Kentucky did have some real challenges. It was just like home to some of the poorest areas in the country at the time, and because the industries there were sort of the industries that struggled most with the Great Depression, it was just a mess. But Ruby LaFoon, the governor,
Sorry,
I know it's just a weird name.
Every time I read it, and every time I've heard you say it, I've chuckled.
Ruby LaFoon decided to deal with the state's economic difficulties by advocating for a really unpopular, I think it was a 1% sales tax. I don't know how he expected a sales tax to help. It basically was saying that sales tax would be like an economic stimulus because it would get reinvested somehow to spur economic growth. I'm not sure. Anyway, it seemed wildly unpopular. Mm-hmm. But this guy was a somewhat prominent figure in Kentucky popular culture, let's just say. And that is because he was very fond of appointing colonels. Mm-hmm. Kentucky colonels.
I have a guess.
This is sort of like a state's version of like a dignitary kind of like a knighthood, if you will, but to the state of Kentucky. Okay.
A knighthood of Kentucky.
For people with service to community or that kind of thing. So one of the colonels who was appointed, there were more than 2,300 of them appointed under Ruby LaFoon.
Colonels in Kentucky?
Well, Ruby LaFoon was on an appointment streak, apparently. There were more than 2,300 of them, but one of them was Harlan Sanders, who earned his distinction for delicious chicken. In fact, so that's how we got Colonel Sanders. Was this guy who was the governor?
Ruby loved him some chicken with, what is it, 7 spices?
So anyway, that's what I learned. What did you learn?
Well, this is nowhere near as fun.
That's okay.
Okay. So when I was prepping for Poland, going through like the whole process, telling my bank and
international travel, all
the
that
things you have to do to like hop
all those
the pond,
adulting things that are really
a lot of
about
prep work. I've not been to Europe since 2012. A lot has changed since then. I'm thinking, okay, this will be easy. I'll land my last flight before arriving in Poland. I was in Frankfurt, Germany, and I was like, okay, I'll just get my money there, like that'll be easy. I couldn't because Poland, even though they're part of the European Union, does not use the euro. They use the zloty. Zloty.
Okay.
Somehow, there's still a few, I should say, countries that are in the EU who have not yet converted to the euro. It seems that Poland is the least likely, least favorited to ever turn to the euro. They probably will eventually.
I think there's technically a plan for them to adopt it.
But they're very slow.
But they're like, yeah, maybe we'll get around to it someday.
Yeah, Poland is, they don't really suffer fools. They're pretty much like, we are an island to ourselves and just leave us here. Which I think is why I like them so much.
I respect it.
Because they're very like, we're good here.
Got it.
But not like in the hateful way, just kind of in the like, we like what we have way.
Like, I'm good. Thank you.
Yeah, just like leave me here.
Leave me alone.
So I love that about Poland. And like I said, I'm kind of joking, but I think that's why I liked them so much. But they use the zloty. I never got zlotys. I did not mess with it because you can't convert it back. Once you have a zloty, you don't get American dollars back.
Okay.
They don't do that. Maybe I shouldn't say that. We did not know how to get it back.
Okay.
At any place.
It didn't seem
If you went back to the
convenient.
cantor, they wouldn't do it, is what I should say.
Got you.
Probably a bank would have. I wasn't going to work that hard. So yeah, they want the zloty.
Okay, good to know. Pay in zlotys.
So if you're going to Poland, which I recommend, pay with a zloty.
Okay.
That's what I learned. So maybe someday they'll join the EU with the euro. But for now, they're hanging on with their zlotys and their pierogies and their amber.
Cool. All right. Any other final thoughts for our listeners? First episode of the new season. Back. Welcome.
Yeah.
So glad to have
Happy
you here.
to be back. I hope you all can find us again and follow us. New vibes for the new kind of season approach that we're taking here with some more common breaks, but I think it's going to actually make it possible to do this.
Yeah, I think we're feeling refreshed and motivated to share important stories.
We will see you again in 2 weeks.
We'll see you in 2 weeks.
Bye.
Bye. Hello, listeners, and thank you so much for tuning in to this week's episode of 16 to 1. This show is produced by a 2-woman team. Your co-hosts Katie Day, our lead researcher and social media manager, and Chelsea Adams, that's me. I edit and produce the show, and I also make the music you hear in our episodes. Please consider subscribing to the show or recommending it to a friend or colleague. We love word-of-mouth support. Visit our website at 16to1.com for show notes and resources, or to get in touch with us. 16 to 1 is sponsored by Moonbeam Multimedia, a firm that partners with civic innovators, educators, and mission-driven organizations to help create stronger communities. Full of delight.
I am
Overflowing with delight.
delightful.
I'm just such a delight.